Wednesday, June 28th, 2023. We have 3 more days to go. And last night and early this morning, we had a severe downpour in my city, Gwangju. It's about 30 centimeters or 1 foot of rain. It was heavy. So one casualty, one 60-year-old woman died when she went to a rice paddy to open the gate to drain the water from her rice paddy. So she was swept in the water in the stream, and she's dead. People are looking for her body. I will read very quickly this interesting article from BBC News. And the reason I am trying to read this article is to understand who is Yevgeny Prigozhin and how he operated his Wagner group. And also, I would like to learn English by reading this beautiful BBC News right off the internet, their website. So here we go. Yevgeny Prigozhin, from Putin's chef to rebel in chief, by Vitaly Shevchenko, BBC Monitoring, 20th March 2023, updated 25th June 2023. So it was updated last night, yesterday. Wagner founder Yevgeny Prigozhin started his career running a chain of hot dog stands. I heard that he's Jewish. After weeks of increasingly critical outbursts against Russia's military leadership, Yevgeny Prigozhin launched a brief rebellion inside Russia, ordering his private army of mercenaries to seize key military sites. President Vladimir Putin was incensed. He called it treason and promised quick punishment. However, before the confrontation could spill into violence, Prigozhin halted his troops and agreed to leave Russia altogether. As leader of the Wagner Group, Prigozhin emerged as a key player in Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Wagner fighters led the Russian onslaught in key areas of the war, including the city of Bakhmut. As the fighting went on, he became increasingly critical of Russia's senior military officials for what he saw as a failing attempt to achieve the aims of the so-called special military operation in Ukraine. However, he stopped short of blaming Russian President Vladimir Putin, with whom he had enjoyed a close relationship in the past. So, how did a man of murky beginnings achieve such influence and a reputation for fearsome brutality? And how did he become the leader of an internal Russian rebellion? Why is Yevgeny Prigozhin? Who is Yevgeny Prigozhin? Yevgeny Prigozhin hails from St. Petersburg, Vladimir Putin's home city. He received his first criminal conviction in 1979, aged just 18, and got a suspended 2.5-year sentence for theft. 2 years later, he was sentenced to 13 years in jail for robbery and theft, none of which he served behind bars. Upon his release from jail, Prigozhin set up a chain of stores selling hot dogs in St. Petersburg. Business went well, and within a few years, in the lawless 1990s, Prigozhin was able to open expensive restaurants in the city. Yevgeny Prigozhin left, pictured serving Vladimir Putin at the dinner in 2011. It was there that he began mixing with the high and mighty of St. Petersburg and then Russia. Highly and mighty, right? That's good expression. Highly and mighty. The highly mighty, mixing with He began mixing with high and mighty of St. Petersburg and then Russia. One of the restaurants called New Island was a boat sailing up and down the Neva River. Vladimir Putin liked it so much that after becoming president, he started taking his foreign guests there. And that is most likely how the two first met. Vladimir Putin saw that I had no problem serving plates to dignitaries in person, Prigozhin said in an interview. We met when he came with Japanese Prime Minister Mori. Yoshiro Mori visited St. Petersburg in April 2000, at the very beginning of Vladimir Putin's rule. Mr. Putin trusted Prigozhin enough to celebrate his birthday on New Island in 2003. Years later, Prigozhin's catering company Concord was contracted to supply food to the Kremlin, earning him the nickname Putin's chef. Firms affiliated with Prigozhin also won lucrative catering contracts from the military and state-run schools. Wow. So his business, the Concord, expanded business into military and state-run schools. How the Wagner Group began. But it was after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2014 that signs began to emerge that Prigozhin was no ordinary businessman. A shadowy private military company said to be linked to him was first reported to be fighting Ukrainian forces in the eastern Donbass region. The briefing room, who's afraid of the Wagner Group? It is commonly known as Wagner after the call sign used by one of its key early commanders. The call sign. He was reportedly fascinated by Nazi Germany, which appropriated the 19th century composer's works for propaganda. Ironically, denazification of Ukraine is a key declared objective of President Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine launched in February 2022. Ukraine is defending against Russian attacks in Bakhmut, spearheaded by Wagner forces. Apart from Ukraine, Wagner was active across Africa and beyond, invariably performing tasks that furthered the Kremlin's agenda, from propping up Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria to combating French influence in Mali. Over time, the mercenary group gained a fearsome reputation for brutality. Wagner members have been accused of torturing a Syrian captive with a sledgehammer, beheading him, and then setting his body on fire in 2017. Beheading, torturing Syrian captive with a sledgehammer, torturing a Syrian captured Syrian captive, beheading. The following year, 3 Russian journalists were killed while investigating Wagner's presence in the Central African Republic. In 2022, Wagner was again accused of killing a man with a sledgehammer over suspicions that he had betrayed the group in Ukraine. Prigozhin declared described unverified footage of the brutal murder as a dog's death for a dog. After members of the European Parliament called for Wagner to be designated as a terrorist group, he claimed he had sent the politicians a blood-stained sledgehammer. For years, Prigozhin denied having any links to Wagner and then sued people who suggested that he did. But then, in September 2022, he said he had set up the group in 2014. The US, EU, and UK have all imposed the sanctions on Wagner, but it is allowed to operate in Russia even though the law bans mercenary activities, blood-stained sledgehammer, blood-stained sledgehammer, blood-stained sledgehammer, blood-stained sledgehammer, bots and trolls. Another way in which Yevgeny Prigozhin got involved in world politics relied on people with keyboards rather than men with guns. For years, he has been accused of being behind so-called troll farms or bot factories, which used accounts on social media and websites to spread pro-Kremlin views, to spread pro-Kremlin views. Such efforts were led by the St. Petersburg-based Internet Research Agency, IRA, best known for meddling in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. The Wagner Center, a block of offices for the mercenary group, opened in St. Petersburg last November. Former FBI Director Robert Mueller, who was appointed to investigate claims of collusion between Donald Trump's campaign and Russia, concluded that the IRA carried out a social media campaign designed to provoke and amplify political and social discord in the U.S., where the company name was Concord, but social discord. It then evolved into an operation to support Mr. Trump and disparage his election rival Hillary Clinton, Mueller's report said. Disparage his election rival. The U.S. put sanctions on the IRA and Prigozhin personally over interference in the 2016 presidential election and then attempted meddling in the 2018 midterm elections. Ukraine is another major target of the IRA's disinformation campaigns, and according to the UK, cyber soldiers with suspected links to Prigozhin have attacked countries including the UK, South Africa, and India. Just as with Wagner, after denying any involvement and suing people who suggested that he was behind troll factories and bot farms, Prigozhin claimed in February 2023 that he had conceived, created, and run the IRA. Why Prigozhin was useful to Putin? But why would the Kremlin want someone like Prigozhin to conduct disinformation and military campaigns across the world? One major reason is so-called plausible deniability. Using private operatives allows the Russian government to deny involvement in highly sensitive operations. And why did Prigozhin ended up in this role? According to journalist Ilya Jegulev, who has studied Prigozhin's biography in detail, there are several reasons he never refused to do dirty deeds. He had nothing to lose reputationally. Jegulev argues Prigozhin's past was another reason. He adds, Putin does not like people with an impeccably clean reputation because they are difficult to control. From this point of view, Prigozhin was an ideal candidate. In a rare interview back in 2011, Prigozhin said he had once written a book for children where the main character helped the king save his kingdom and then went on to do something truly heroic. However, Wagner is involved in the war in Ukraine. From criticism to direct confrontation, but as Russia's invasion faltered, Prigozhin became more and more critical of Russia's military leadership. His relations with the defense ministry worsened, and he was barred from recruiting more prisoners in early 2023. I will stop here and drive my car to the parking lot near my office and continue to read from where I left off, because if I am delayed, there would be some traffic jam on the road and I would lose a lot of minutes. So bear with me and I will come back. So he claimed repeatedly that the defense ministry starved Wagner of ammunition, and at one point, from criticism to direct confrontation. But as Russia's invasion... What the fuck? Where were we? How Wagner is involved in the war in Ukraine. Initially, Prigozhin shunned the limelight, usually communicating with media via statements issued by his catering company Conford. This changed after Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Months into the campaign, it was clearly stalling, and Prigozhin's services were much in demand again. A video released on March showed Yevgeny Prigozhin speaking in Bakhmut. After years of denying that Wagner even existed, on 27 July 2022, Kremlin-controlled media suddenly admitted that it was fighting in eastern Ukraine. Prigozhin also started posting videos on social media, apparently filmed in occupied parts of Ukraine, in which he boasted of Wagner's exploits there. By this time, no other private military company in the world had access to so much kit, including fighter jets, helicopters, and tanks. After tens of thousands of Russian troops were killed in Ukraine, Prigozhin was allowed to recruit in prisons. He personally visited numerous jails to promise convicted criminals that they would be able to go home free and with their convictions removed after 6 months of fighting for Wagner in Ukraine if they survived. From criticism to direct confrontation. But as Russia's invasion faltered, Prigozhin became more and more critical of Russia's military leadership. I wonder when he visited the prisons and whether their time is up for the prisoners. From criticism to direct confrontation. But as Russia's invasion faltered, Prigozhin became more and more critical of Russia's military leadership. His relations with the defense ministry worsened, and he was barred from recruiting more prisoners in early 2023. He claimed repeatedly that the defense ministry starved Wagner of ammunition, and at one point he even accused Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov of treason. Prigozhin's increasingly outspoken criticism spilled over into direct confrontation in June 2023 when he accused Russia's military of attacking Wagner base in Ukraine, which Moscow denied. His Wagner fighters then crossed from occupied Ukrainian territory into Russia and seizing key military sites in Rostov-on-Don, a southern Russian city near the border. Russia opened a criminal case against Prigozhin for inciting an armed rebellion, while President Putin called his actions treason. However, hours into that, what looked like a march by Wagner fighters towards Moscow to remove the military leadership, Prigozhin called off his troops and announced he had agreed a deal meditated by the Belarus leader Alexander Lukashenko. The Kremlin confirmed the details, which included dropping the charges against Prigozhin and his troops who participated in the mutiny in return for the controversial mercenary chief moving to Belarus. He left Rostov after the deal, but his whereabouts remain unknown. His whereabouts. From this article, we learn such expressions as the high and mighty, blood-stained sledgehammer beheading, the Syrian captive, his whereabouts, seizing Concord, Prigozhin, the high and mighty, seize the eastern part of murky beginnings, and so on. Well, that's it. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.